everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Maureen. I am the founder and owner of BarMD. We are a full service bar prep company, and we're really focused on teaching you how to do things to pass the California bar, how to effectively write essays, how to effectively write a PT, how to deconstruct MBEs. So if y'all have questions, I'll definitely take questions at the end. So feel free to put them in the Q&A and I will respond to them in turn. I'll get out of here. We'll get you in and out this evening, probably about 30 minutes or so, just to keep it tight. All right, so let me get my PowerPoint up. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what you should be doing now to prep for the February 2025 bar. We're going to talk about identifying your weaknesses if you have taken the bar exam before. And I also have some free resources that you may find helpful. This session, Tina, is for the UBE. All right, which I think is you're the UBE, Tina, right? All right. So yeah, so this is to prep for the UBE tonight. So just some like basic stuff. This is sort of silly, but I just like to say it because it's a good idea. Like what you should be doing right now, any like kind of basic life needs, go to the doctor, the dentist, mechanic. If you're looking for a job, you should be hopefully trying to do that stuff now. Definitely make it a priority. And like I will say, send me a DM too if you're retaking the exam or if this is your first time. So send me a chat if you're repeating or if you're taking this for the first time, just so that I sort of know, because it helps me, just address certain issues or, it helps me address particular issues. So one thing that I like to mention, oh yes, Tina, I will do that right now. One thing that I like to mention is just how important it is to not let this exam really be the only thing going on. It can really feel like that's the case. And yeah, it can really feel like that's the case for a lot of people. And you want to make sure that you're not just doing that, especially if you're retaking the exam. So really try to prioritize. And I say like one evening per week to see friends, see family, and like enjoy life a little bit. I think that it's massively important. So just something to keep in mind because you're going to go into a long stretch, especially for those of you that are retaking the exam. It's just kind of brutal. It's just brutal. Sorry, there's some people that have tech issues. All right, that's taken care of. So I think especially if you're repeating and when you're taking it for the first time, it is still important to have at least one evening a week that is off from studying, not working, and just actually enjoying life a little bit to just kind of keep your sanity. And one thing that's incredibly, incredibly important, if you are working, you absolutely need to start studying as soon as possible. So and even if you're not working, you should be starting to work as soon as possible. But particularly for those that are repeating, many people aren't fortunate enough to be able to take just, a year off work or however long. So I really say like you should be starting as soon as you possibly can. So if you've received your scores, if you're retaking and you have received your scores, you really need to understand where you went wrong. So like one thing that we do that's completely free is a strategy session. And I'm going to put the link here in the chat to everybody because you can schedule a session where I will go over your scores with you. I will look at your scores. If you have your essays and PTs, make sure that you have requested those if they're available in your jurisdiction, like New York. I think you have to actually you have to like mail in something requesting them, and then they'll send them to you for free. But it's really important to get those essays, get your scores, and understand what happened. If you have access to your bar prep course, make sure that you get that. If you have a free repeat, make sure that you get that, get access to that again. And in terms of when you should start studying, start no later than November 1st. Like we have our full program that's like, your study schedule, essays course, PT course, MBE, like everything. We have schedules that start November 1st, and that's a nice clean date. So I would start no later than that, which I think is this coming Friday. So you want to sort of mentally prepare and organizationally prepare just other life commitments before then. So that's why I wanted to do this workshop today, was so that you could, take this into account and really get, whatever you need to have situated, conversations you may need to have, support you need to get, you can sort of try to work on that stuff this week and then hopefully start by next Friday. I'm going to go back to understanding. Yeah. For those of you that are working in particular, but generally speaking, when you start to study, it should be approximately 3 to 4 hours a day to start. And that will incrementally increase to approximately 6 to 8 hours a day in January, February. You always, always, always want to focus on your active tasks. So focus on writing your essays, focus on writing your PTs, and focus on doing your MBEs. And all of this you want to do incredibly intentionally, but particularly the MBEs. So with the MBEs, there's only a finite number of questions. I don't like the advice to just do like 5,000 questions. What that results in is people memorizing questions. But instead, when you do a multiple choice question, you should be doing every question intentionally. We do teach you how to do this in my courses. I think in our free MBE workshop, I do walk through this a little bit too, but where you're really looking at every MBE question, looking at the fact pattern, identifying the issue that's being tested. So what element is being tested, for example? What's the narrow issue? Seeing if you're spotting the right issue, and then going through the 4 answer choices. And before you look at the answer, like the answers, I want you to look at the answer choices and see if you can explain why the 3 incorrect answers are incorrect and why the 1 incorrect is incorrect. So see if you can do that. And for every single option, if there is an answer where you can't, in advance of looking at the answers, actually explain why it's incorrect. So this happens all the time where you're like, well, I just know that that's wrong, right? If you have that thought, and even if you're confident, you're like, I know it's wrong, but if you can't verbally explain it or write out an answer, then you don't know it well enough. And there's a point of law to be learned from that. So really focus on doing, like, make the most of every single MBE. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. So working studiers, in particular here, the focus on the active task is how many of you are going to be working while you study? Let me know in the chat, tell me. So there, you're going to have assignments to outline, you're going to have assignments to review videos, you're going to have assignments just to do all sorts of stuff that are sort of passive, where you're just taking in information. If that's the case, if that is you, then you really need to focus on the active tasks, even if you feel uncomfortable. Like, for example, if you have an assignment to like review outlines, or maybe like I assign people to make little mini outlines for particular topics, you might not be able to make your full outline. That's okay. But I want you to focus on, at least reviewing, and then at least review. And then, after you review, then you write the essay. But don't just put off doing the essay because you don't feel like you know the law well enough. You need to still write the essay, or do what you can. And you can take like a sort of a baby step approach to writing essays. I have a podcast that I haven't updated in a while, but the very first episode, I talk all about this. So you should absolutely listen to that. I also, in the podcast, there's like big areas of Black letter law that I just go over for essays in particular. So it's really good for those of you that are working, if you have a commute, you can listen to me explain the law to you on a variety of different things. And I will be updating that actually starting very soon. Also, for those of you that are working, I would check to see if you can, maybe you can work part-time. A lot of people want to instead, they want to just take like 2 weeks or a month off completely. And I get that. But yeah, the podcast is on Spotify. It's just called the BarMD podcast. So what I always say is, like, rather than taking a full week off, which like I would ideally like you to do that for the full week, the 2 weeks, the month of February off, if you can. I would rather have you take time and like work less over a longer period each day. And the reason for that is because memorization is a recursive process. It's not a cramming for the bar. Like, it just doesn't work very well that way. So you have to let the information kind of sink in. You have to come back to it and come back to it and come back to it. And that's really how memorization works most effectively. So that's why I think that is ideal. So, maybe you can start earlier and be done earlier with work too. So see if there's any way you can sort of adjust your schedule. And generally speaking, also like one other thing that people do is like maybe instead of taking like the 2 weeks off or like, a stretch, you can just take an extra day off each week for a period of time. And maybe that will help, getting 3 full days can be really helpful. And this schedule, I usually, asked if the schedule, if you're a first time taker, if you're not working, you're going to be doing more like watching videos. You're going to be doing really all of that stuff, creating your attack outlines. That being said, I always say to like watch the videos at the end of the day. So don't start off because then you get tired. Like whenever your brain is best for you, so that may be like for me, I was always like really, really good from like 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then my focus would sort of dwindle. So know where you best focus and prioritize that time. And you should absolutely start memorizing early. Like you should be starting memorization now. Like I am not kidding. Like I don't know why it's a thing that, and for first timers, you will hear this. Oh, don't worry about memorizing right away. I hate that advice. Like one, people, it's inaccurate to say don't worry about memorizing. And I think it leads to people doing essays and doing MBEs, doing things open note, which is a problem. Do not do that. Instead, you should be doing stuff closed note. And if you see an essay, you go to write an essay and you're like, well, I don't know this at all, then fine, totally fine. Stop your timer and instead look at it, see if you can issue spot it. Do you know what issues are being tested? Then do you know those rules a little bit or what do you know? And then, and this is what I talk about in this first episode of the podcast a bit, I'm going to talk about it just a tiny bit here. But if you do that essay and you just say, all right, I didn't know it, but I did issue spot it and I did get the right issues, great. That tells you that you're good at issue spotting, but maybe you don't know the rules. See if you can see how much of the rule you can actually get though, because I'm sure that you know part of it. Don't try making stuff up just yet. That's like you should do at the end, but see what you do know. Then fine, read the answer. So read through the answer and do something with the information. So if you didn't know the law, make a flashcard because then you'll have a growing stack of flashcards and you'll review those daily. So make a flashcard, do something with that information that you didn't know. And then a day or two later, try to do the essay again, close note in time, because you've already looked at the answer. You've hopefully studied the law, worked on memorization, and then you're going to have a much better outcome. Generally speaking, you should be studying 6 days a week. I say usually take Fridays off if you're working. If you are not working, or if you're not working, then you pick your day. It doesn't really matter. But for working people, I just say like by Friday, you're probably exhausted. If you have like a Monday to Friday, you're probably exhausted and you sort of need that evening time to relax. I, when I took the bar, I was not comfortable taking a full day off of studying. So I did a half day Friday and a half day Sunday. So do what works for you. All right. I've got a couple questions that came in and I will get to those at the end. And I will just post the link also if you want to make an appointment with me. Use that. It'll give you the email address where you can email me and send me your answers and book an appointment with me. It'll give you all the instructions once you schedule a time to chat. So takeaways from the score reports. So this is often like one of the first things I sort of say, and then I will dig deeper into someone's score report. This is for someone that is repeating the bar exam more specifically, because you wouldn't have this if this is your first time. So generally speaking, I will look at the numbers and I'll say, okay, well, what's the score? Are the MBE and the written scores similar? Often when the MBE and the written scores are similar, that tells me that the person probably doesn't know enough law or doesn't understand more. And then we'll also look at the essays, we'll look at the MBE scores and see if there's a wide variation. And it is incredibly, incredibly helpful to get your essays and your PTs from the bar if they provide them, because I know the essays, I know the PTs, and I can tell you what you did wrong based on that. I can look at them and say, okay, you're missing the issues. You're not going deep enough on the analysis. What is the issue? So it's incredibly helpful. But often when the MBE and the written scores are similar and they're obviously below passing, then there's usually some like nuance, some like deeper understanding of the law that's missing. At least that's like something that I can almost guarantee. When you have a low MBE but a high written score, that tells us that you probably need to understand the deeper nuances. Like, because the essays, they cover a pretty wide breadth and they do go fairly deep, but they don't go as deep as the MBEs. They rarely do. So it tells me if you have a low MBE, then what you're probably missing is a lot of that nuance. And it's probably, what we want to do is we want to identify the subjects and the subtopics and drill those down. I do a ton of MBE tutoring. That's probably the most tutoring that I do because it takes the most work to really bring up an MBE score. I think it's easier to bring up your written score than it is to bring up your MBE score generally. If you have a low MBE and a higher written though, and when I say high, so like I'm saying, closer to passing. So if your scores are below 250, below 240, around there, like we need to, do just some, memorization of the law, understanding, and work on the skills associated. But I think that somebody generally that like has a high written, so maybe you have a 130 on the written, a 125, to 130 on the written, somewhere in there, or, just you didn't reach the score that you need for your jurisdiction. If that's the case, then you're probably someone that can make an argument and you can see the argument. But on the MBE, you might really get stuck between two answers, because on an essay, if you got that same issue presented to you that you got on the MBE, you might be able to argue two sides. So I would venture to guess that you're probably getting stuck between two answers a lot. And then conversely, if you have a lower written score and a higher MBE score, you're really probably lacking depth in your analysis. Because generally, if you have a high MBE score, again, like, 130, 125, around there, I'd say that you do know probably a lot of the law. You have a good majority of the law that you know, but it's probably on your written essays where you're lacking depth in the analysis. You're not including counter arguments. You're not using enough facts. So I know so much from when I look at a score report, but I know a lot more when I'm looking at your essays and looking at your PTs, because I also get all of the essays and PTs. I've seen them, I know them, I write answers to them, etc. So, and I will be doing, I think it's in December. It's once the bar examiners release the essays and their analysis sheets to bar prep companies. Then I do, which is either November 1st or December 1st if they release them, but I will do a workshop that's free where I'll walk through the 6 essays and the 2 PTs. So based on that information and based on your own knowledge of, like, what did you feel when you went into the exam? How are you feeling? How much of is it just so you don't know enough black letter law? Is it an issue spotting issue? And this applies in both essays and the MBEs. Is it a time management issue? Were you doing essays close to note and time, which you should be doing from the start, essentially? So, and like I said, we can take some baby steps on writing essays that way, but no matter what, I never, ever, ever want you writing an essay with a rule book open and just copying it. Like, that doesn't really do anything for memorization. It's just kind of wasting time. So that's also part of time management, is where you really effectively studying, where you're using your time most effectively. It's also in the essays and in the PTs, are you going over on time? So you really need to be aware of your time management, of, are you finishing the essay? Are you doing a really good job on call 1 of an essay, but like not finishing call 4? You need to do that. So it's really about your process of writing essays, your process of writing PTs, and you really need to be very, highly cognizant of the time management within each written event. Also, are you scared to write? A lot of people are. A lot of people are too nervous to write essays. I don't like to write essays, and I've written 5 textbooks on all of the black letter law. I've written templates for every essay, like every issue. So and I still look at the essay and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I don't want to do it timed and closed note either. But you have to kind of do that. And getting over that fear is key. And so there are strategies for that, for sure. I have so many people that I've worked with one-on-one and in my courses and all of that have been scared to write. And then a month or 2 later, they're like, oh, I actually look forward to writing the essays now, because they get it and it becomes a lot easier. I want you to be, you're not going to want to write essays, but I want you to be comfortable doing it, even if you know that you're going to see an issue that you're not comfortable with. Because once you see an issue where you don't know it, then it gives you a chance to learn that issue and learn it in the context of a fact pattern, which is so much better than just reading an outline. Reading an outline is just not that great. It might be your reading comprehension. And I don't mean that, I feel like that sounds like such a basic term, but it's actually really deep. So when you're reading, particularly on MBEs, are you actually understanding the issue they're trying to get you to get at? Understanding the way the bar examiners write things. They write things sort of weird sometimes. So it's issues, it's not just basic reading comp, but it gets a little bit deeper at a lot of the nuances within the way questions are written, particularly within the MBE. The last one there is typing speed. I hear this a lot. I actually hear that people are like, oh, I'm not a fast typer. I doubt that you're not writing, that you don't type fast enough to write a passing answer. Because I would venture to guess that most of you can write 40 words a minute. That's the national average, I believe, is 40 words a minute. So, but what really happens is, for a lot of people that say that they just don't type very quickly, it's just that they're actually taking a lot of time to think through the issue. So they're pausing a lot. That's usually the true issue in my view and from my experience. So if you think that it's your typing speed, that the way that I teach people to write essays is, it will help you with the speed, because I teach you a way that shows you how to think through the issues before you really go in to start typing it. I don't want you to ever just go into an essay and you're like, all right, call 1, you read through the background and you look at the questions and you just start in on call 1 without having thought through each call first. And that will help. If you truly do have issues with your typing speed, do typing games online. Like that's it. That's all you got to do is do typing games online. Do like 10 to 15 minutes a day. And that will truly, truly, truly help. So here's some ways to attack the weaknesses that you have. So black letter law, if that's your issue, you need to quiz yourself. It requires repetition and you need to interleave the review of the law. So what that means is your study schedule should absolutely not be something where you're doing like Civ Pro for a week, torts for a week, contract for a week. It should absolutely incorporate different subjects and different types of tasks on most days. So obviously we start with one subject, then we add on a second, then we add on a third. But you don't just stay in a silo of a subject for each time. So the way that my schedule is prepared, it's incredibly complex to put it together because we design it where we interleave the subjects and the activities. So essays, PTs, MBEs. We interleave all of that so that it actually maximizes your memorization because you are reviewing the law more frequently that way. So it's complex. So your schedule is critically important. If your issue is issue spotting, you need to go through more essays, go through more MBEs, really focus on the precision in your issue spotting. Really look at the facts and look at more MBEs or essays that test the same topics and issues. So like, for example, you can get a group of free speech MBEs, or you can get a group of free speech essays. In my MBE book, I wrote an MBE book and it's different because the way that I wrote it has 410 questions in it. But what it does is you review the black letter law for a topic, and then you do questions testing you on that topic. So it helps you to see, like when you look at just a group of free speech questions and the real MBE questions, when you look at them, you can see how they test particular issues. So I've had a ton of good feedback on that. Time management, you got to just track your time. You have to like really track your time like throughout the day, track how long you're taking on an essay. The biggest thing is don't just sit around reviewing outlines. Like, do not do that. Don't go to like 15 different sources. Like, pick a source for the law and just stick with it. If you look at a bunch of different sources, you look at like my book and then the Barbary or Themis or Kaplan materials, we all say the same thing different ways. And I've seen people just get in such a tizzy over checking all those different things. Don't do that. It's a waste of your time. It really is a waste of your time. Know how long it takes you to write out certain issues. How long does it take you to analyze negligence on an essay? It's stuff like that. So really getting down your time management, understanding strategically how to finish an essay when you're running out of time. If you're scared to write, take an incremental approach and also just do rewriting. If you get the incremental approach, I mentioned that earlier. I talk about it in my first episode of the podcast, but do a lot of rewriting too. So you write an essay, you bomb it. You're like, cool, that sucked. If that happened, then a couple days later, just redo that essay and you're going to do it really well. It's going to build your confidence and cement the memorization. So you got to get over the being scared to write. Reading comprehension, like learning strategies now to correct this issue. So for example, one thing, I'll give you guys a tip. One thing that I teach people to do all the time, particularly on the MBE, is to take like a piece of scratch paper, if you get scratch paper, or take any like other piece of paper and cover up so like here, let me show y'all. If this is my MBE, here, I want to cover up the next line so that I'm just looking at what's here and I'm not tempted to just like run ahead. Because sometimes like we think quickly and like I will like see further down and not really pay attention to what I'm reading. So it's incredibly important to just like take a piece of paper and move it down the page. Does that make sense? I own a bar prep company. We have our program, and I'm super excited. I've actually been revamping it. So, but it's from $9.99. So if you want to do something different from what you did before, our classes really focus on teaching you how to do things. So, how do you step by step write an essay? We have our own study schedule that does all of the difficult things of like laying stuff out for you. You get our outlines, our essays, enough essays for you to practice with model answers, PTs with model answers. A lot of the essays and PTs too, there's a video of me teaching my deconstruction of it, talking about the essay. You get the essay course, the PT course, and then we have an MBE program too. A lot of you have an MBE program. So if you have one, don't buy another one. If you have Barbary or if you have the Adaptive Bar or UWorld, if you have one of those, that is sufficient. And then we have skills lectures. And then there's also, we have BarMD Core Plus, which is new. And with that, you get everything that's on the screen, plus you get 3 tutoring sessions. You get access to our live Sunday sessions where there's 7 of them where you practice and then we go over the essays or PTs with you. And you get 2 of my books. You get the essay book and the PT book too. I also have this. I have a these are all free. So I have a podcast. It's just called the BarMD podcast. I have a YouTube channel where there's a bunch of free a bunch of webinars that I have done. There's some stuff that you can go on and you can watch and see how I teach things, all on YouTube. We have some stuff that's also behind a paywall if you want to be like a YouTube member. We have our Reddit and Facebook groups. We have on my website, if you go to bar-md.com, we have on the top, we have a page that's free study resources. So you can see that stuff. And we have some samples, some like sample chapters from our book too, that you can check out. That's it. So a couple of questions that I got in the Q&A. Somebody asked, as a repeat taker, is it worth it to ask for the MEE and PT copies? Absolutely. Like, please, please, please get them. And my email address, if you want to send your score, I mean, you should just, again, I'll put the link, book a strategy session with me. That gives you the email to send me your essays and PTs. And that way I can talk you through the scores and talk you through like a plan to strategize for what you should be doing to prepare for the upcoming bar exam. And I do have times available this week, not in the next couple of days, but I have some later in the week. Any other questions? If you don't want to raise hand or type them in the chat. The strategy video, which strategy video, Wozer? There are a ton of free videos in my courses. There's a lot. I don't give away everything in there though, obviously. So my courses go way more in depth. Yeah. Yes. Oh, the strategy session, Wozer, that you're asking about is we do a free, that's totally free, the strategy session. And if you know that you need to improve your writing, you tend to get nervous, you just have to practice it a lot more. And yes, as a repeat taker, it is absolutely worth it to ask for the copies of your essays and PTs. And as a retaker who can't afford bar materials, you do need an MBE, you need an MBE program. Thanks, Sawa. So yeah, I do think it's worth it to buy Adaptivar, absolutely. And I like Adaptivar over UWorld, but it's really personal preference. I like it because it's better with data. Melissa, so somebody asked, how do I recommend making your schedule while working? It's like 3 to 4 hours a day, switching up the subjects, is what I would recommend. So focusing on doing active practice. Somebody asked, what's the MBE practice book I recommend? I recommend the one that I wrote. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but it is unique. It is absolutely unique to the other books that are out there because it provides the law, it provides strategies and tips, and it provides real questions. There's 410 real questions. So here, I'll put the link in the chat for the MBE book. Vanessa, with Core Plus, we can go over, yeah, and it's simplified. Thanks, Sawa. It doesn't come with like handwritten grading, but in the tutoring session in Core Plus, that's where you get the grading. Like we go through your essays, we teach you to, like we do so much more in depth. I think that tutoring is much more effective than written feedback because we will give you a score and we'll actually walk you through and teach you how to fix the issues. So, and you can go through, it's a better value because you can go through more essays in a single tutoring session than like when you pay for grading, you're paying for one specific essay to be graded. Core Plus classes, we have the schedule that starts November 1st. And if you know you struggle with timing for the MBE, you should start timing right away. You should always be timing. But I will say, focus on precision at first. So like November, December, I wouldn't worry about your timing so much. So yeah, and yes, Tina, the MBE book is available in hard copy. The other books are going to be available very soon too. Yeah, Core Plus classes, let's see. For grading essays and PTs, which course? Michael, I would suggest Core Plus. So you can reach out to, and we can definitely help with that. Because I know we had emailed with you a little bit. Yeah, so Tamara, if you're working, I would say it's really what works best for you, 4 to 5 hours a day-ish. So 5 to 9 every day. Yeah, excluding Fridays. Like you still need to take an evening off. And negotiate, that's a ask for advice, tips for handwriters. It's just to, practice that way. That's such a big, broad question that it's hard to answer without a lot more specificity. And I don't have time to get into all of that today. But everything I said today applies to handwriting too. All right. I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you so much for joining me. if you guys need anything, please feel free to email us at hello@bar-md.com. I'll put that in the chat. And we have a ton of like more free workshops coming up. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Anonymous person asked, do I have prices for tutoring? Yeah, we have generally tutoring starts, we do them in sessions. We do them in packs of 5 sessions. And for a tutoring pack of 5 sessions, it's $9.99. And they're 45-minute sessions. And we can talk about that more and talk about if tutoring is really what you need. I don't, and how much tutoring do you need to do based on your scores or based on where you're at. So it's, and you have to just be really cautious when thinking about a bar tutor. Just because somebody passed the bar doesn't mean that they're qualified to tutor you. You want to people, in my opinion, that know how to teach. You want them to know the black letter law. You want them to know all of the components of the bar exam specifically and how to teach to anybody, really. So it's there's so much that goes into tutoring, and that's like I am incredibly strict on who I will hire. Like they have to have so much experience. I have to be highly confident that they're going to provide it at the standard that I like. So just be cautious with tutors. And yes, a recording of this will be available. We'll be sending it out, a link to watch it, I think tomorrow or the next day. So we'll send that out for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye, Paula.